This is the Check for Traps podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Aaron.
And yesterday we were lucky enough to actually see Uncut Gems, the new Adam Sandler movie, in the cinema. And we know that it's being released on Netflix at the end of this month. And it is very, very difficult to find the words to describe the movie. I mean, it was really unpleasant, but always on purpose. It's kind of unparalleled. I don't know if we're treating this as, one of the first great movies of this decade, because if it really does belong to the last decade and it was released in America in the last decade, then I genuinely do believe that if that's the case, that was one of the best movies of the last decade. I cannot recommend it highly enough. We're going to do a quick spoiler-free review and then we'll talk more in depth. But Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. You said we were lucky to see it, and I think I didn't feel very lucky at the time. But you're right. It was a damn fine movie. It was really wonderful. A great start to the UK decade. Adam Sandler, a man who we all have a very complex relationship with, mostly ignoring like the evil twin locked in the attic upstairs. he's come down and he's done a belter. It was wonderful. Yeah, I mean, in terms of spoiler-free reviews, I would say go see this. I can't really, in the same way that I didn't believe people when they were telling me, oh, it's a tour de force Adam Sandler performance, then I don't expect you to believe me either. I can only ask that you go and see it. And hey, you don't even need to pay for it in like 2 weeks' time
That's
or a
true.
week's time or something.
That's
What an era to live in where you can have that fall in your lap one weekday afternoon.
It's fucking brilliant. It is one of those things where, proceeding into, some of the newer phases of like capitalism, I've got to be honest, it really isn't as bad as some people will say that it is, because if this is what the streaming model will allow us, Uncut Gems, a singular, just one-of-a-kind movie that actually puts bullets in the heads of other movies, and we'll talk about that later, and takes their place in the canon, that's amazing, because this is a lot better and will be a lot more widely seen than a lot of the kinds of things we would have got in the cinema, even before, the whole, I guess, like superhero market crisis and stuff, and the streaming giants entering the game. And I will say as well, picking up on what you said, you may be able to see, you will be able to see it for free on Netflix, but if you do have a chance to see this in the cinema, I would urge you above all else to do so, because, it was, and we both had a very similar experience, but to be arrested by this movie in a theatre is, and I realise how ridiculous I sound right now and I don't even care, is so positive for the experience, because it's horrible enough at times and tense enough and exhausting enough that if I was at home on my own watching it on the computer, I would have paused it 4, maybe 5 times to I just load it with all of these intermissions, and even though, that does speak to the quality of the film, it's that intense that it can almost be too much at times. Also, I think that, to be a hostage to the experience is the best way.
Yeah, definitely. In preparation for this film, I went and watched the Safdie's last film that was made by two brothers called the Safdie brothers, one who shares a name with our glorious Josh.
Fuck yeah.
I watched, it's called Good Times. It's also on Netflix. I guess they must have struck a deal. No, it's I had to pause it upwards of a dozen times, I want to say. And that film's not as bad, or not as good, I suppose I should say, as Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems is a master of its craft compared to Good Times in the remit of unrelenting terror, but terror on a very banal level, a comparatively banal level.
Hubris.
Yeah, a big recommendation for Good Times as well. I agree. I think it's not a shame, because it's great that this film got made. It's great that it's going to be seen by so many people, but it does feel kind of funny that it was made by and will be released on the platform that doesn't overly suit it due to its nature. Like you said, having that control is probably a minor detriment.
You kind of have to choose your poison, don't you? It's, you get all of the great things about it, but the one, the trade-off, the Faustian gambit, is that it will be released on a streaming service. At the very least, it's good, because they do release these movies, these tentpole ones, in theatres for awards recognition. I just wonder how much longer that will last. If the Oscars do something uncharacteristically, modern, and decide to change the criteria, then they'll have no reason to pop them into theatres, and I think that'll be a shame, because I love seeing these movies in the cinema. Even though I love Netflix, and it's great, and they're awesome, and they do excellent work, and they delivered some of the best movies of last year to us. Absolutely large up Netflix, but
I'll tell you what I'll do, Josh.
Yeah,
I got a solution to this. I've just came up with it. I will
This will be good.
Duct tape you to the chair whenever there's a film that we suspect you might want to pause.
Yeah.
and then you'll have the captive experience. But I might pass out, which will be unfortunate. But you'll probably be able to escape.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I think yeah, because then then you can't unpause it. You'll have your nice little you can pretend there's like a really fat guy sitting next to you on one side, and like a woman having a breakdown on the other. It'll be just like going to the cinema in the UK. You can have some fucking annoying bastards in front of you who have thought they were seeing an Adam Sandler film and are clearly really distressed by what's going on, but don't have the good decency to remain quiet about it like we did.
I was so grabbed by the movie that I didn't even realise that other people around me were having as bad an experience. I thought I was embarrassing myself.
Oh no,
Like,
the entire cinema was pulsating with anxious energy.
Yeah, good. Because I was like watching it through my fingers, really aggressively, just kind of like pressing my hands against my face. I mean, I hate it when people talk about movies in this way because I feel like it's disingenuous. So please take that as, if anything, just kind of a qualifying statement that I really mean what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's yeah. People love to the logical conclusion to the edge of my seat. Like I was pulling out my hair. I was fucking slamming my head against the back of the chair. Like it's like, people don't actually do this, but sometimes you can just have an actual physical reaction to a film, and it's great.
Yeah,
I remember at one point I had to just look in the corner of the cinema screen, like just to focus on something for a second before going back to it.
Becoming stressful actually having to watch it, and we'll go into more why this was later, because it wasn't even just like the overarching dramas, of which there were many, but they also, these Safdie brothers guys, they had a really good way about making even just, the scenes from kind of like a smaller perspective quite stressful, even in just the micro aspects of it, just their interactions. There was lots of overlaid dialogue, lots of bickering.
So much bickering.
They created this just like, this setting of like almost just white noise. There was just always so much garbage flying around and problems being created, both minor and major. And I said to you, like Aaron's big thing is he always says, he quotes that thing about how, in great art, it will feel completely natural if a character just stops what they're doing to go and get themselves a glass of water. And in this movie, I never had any idea what was going to happen next, how they were going to respond once again, if it was going to be in a big way or in a small way, or if they go left or if they go right, if they'd stop, if they'd go. And congratulations to them for making it. I don't know what they're going to do next. If they never make a great movie again, they absolutely fucking smashed it. This was brilliant for Adam Sandler, and it may be worth getting into spoilers. What do you think?
Spoilers. This film's fucking crazy. It's got not limited to, but including power forward Kevin Garnett and voice of Elsa from Frozen, Idina Menzel. And that's without factoring in, comedy schlockmeister Adam Sandler.
Lakeith Stanfield as well.
Quite a cast, and they deliver one hell of a performance, and everyone does. And, Kevin Garnett, as far as I'm aware, has never acted in his life. Or probably very, very limitedly, and he is incredible. He is. I'd say on average, if you like did a dissection of this, I would say there were probably 2 people talking on average for like the length of the film. Like obviously sometimes it's 1, but more than often it's like 4. So it would definitely level out to a ridiculously high number. And you've just got to keep track of all this constant whirlpool of action that is Adam Sandler's life as a jewelry store owner in something called the Diamond District of New York, which I think is apparently a thing. A terrifying concept, might I add.
Indeed. The movie implies that it's a largely Jewish-owned district.
I can believe it.
Yeah. That's also what I loved about it. I mean, it was such an original setting and such an original character. And I mean, people try and do these, greaseball hustler characters in movies, and it's just not. It's just tired.
Doesn't always land.
Yeah. But in this, it almost felt like no one had ever made a movie like this before. I wasn't comparing it to other things ever. He was just there with his weirdly white teeth that he paid for. His fucking old man hair, his bad body, his shit, like his trashy clothes, his chains,
terrible facial hair, ridiculous rings. He had like a New York Knicks, like 2000
garish ring, yeah,
a finals ring, because they clearly paid loads for it, because only the players who competed get that, and they rarely sell them. So it's like, sure, this guy must be a ridiculously rich, very passionate basketball fan. And as you learn, he certainly is, because he spends the majority of the movie betting on basketball, and specifically the basketball exploits of Kevin Garnett, who's a man who becomes obsessed with his uncut gem. Just to do it sort of chronologically, I've already mentioned this to you, Josh, but I want to give a big shout out to the beginning of this film, where it shows an Ethiopian diamond mine, and it does something I've never seen in a film before, which is it shows that the diamond mine is run and administered by Chinese people, which is something that's happening across Africa It has been for the last like 2 decades, ever since basically the end of the Cold War. Basically, never gets referenced in Western media. So I was like, perfect. Not even done politically. It was completely hand waved. It was just a nice detail.
I think what is brilliant about all of the transactions that occur in this movie is that it's not just that situations occur that, ruin one obligation, say the fact that he needs to have the opal to the auction house on the Friday, but it's also that not only is it bad enough that he can't get it to the auction house on the Friday because, he's loaned it out, KG, who's not responding to phone calls, but then it invests that with double and triple and sometimes quadruple drama because in his crazy mind, in this spider's web of debt and obligation that this character is keeping, and that they keep you as an audience completely on board with as well. Him not having that then means that he also won't have something else for something equally urgent, which means that he won't have something else for this person, and it's just he continually ties himself up. And then even when, God, I just feel like I've been this guy now that I've seen this movie. Even when he finally gets himself out of the situation, and you breathe something close to a sigh of relief. I mean, we both knew what was going to happen, and these are the spoilers, but the one thing you did know going in was it was so unrelentingly horrible that you knew that even once he got himself out of the hole, he was going to put himself straight back in again. But the movie kind of met this expectation. It was still horrible to behold. It had one of the best speeches I've ever seen in a movie, and because it's, there's a reason he was monologuing, and because he was trying to convince someone, he was trying to convince himself. And at that point we're in uncharted waters, because I knew that was going to be the horrible twist, but now we're moving forward from it. What's going to happen next? And I have to say that the ending of this movie was insanely satisfying. It was as satisfying as it was sustained uncomfortable. It was.
Talk about fucking bagging the landing. Like, they could have fucked up the ending and it still would have been a great film.
Yes.
There have been films that have done that, have maintained a similar intensity and then just completely failed to materialize a decent ending. But yeah, fuck. The last 20 minutes of this is what really, tied it all off so nicely for nearly every character. Yeah, like you said, you're sort of theorizing about what it does that great thing where you're sort of theorizing about what happens next, because like you said, these characters do feel like they're walking around and autonomously.
Yes.
And so you're just like, there is so much more happening, and I don't want a sequel or anything, but it's just fascinating to think about them and the ridiculous situation that this man inflicted upon everyone that he knew.
Oh my God, and that finally, the debt that he finally couldn't pay was created by his absence, because he owed all that money to Judd Hirsch, and he could have paid it to him, but he played the game just too hard and acted too crazy, and now his legacy is the same as his life. He will continue to not show up for people and to cause absences in other people's finances, even though he finally won enough to give back to everyone, just because he did it in such an absurd way that someone...
Because I know he doesn't even reference, and again, it's not really even in his mind when he places the bet. So yeah, he gets a large amount of money finally at the end. He sells the fucking opal after so long of trying to, and it getting constantly devalued, and then eventually just taking whatever he can get for it. I think he doesn't even reference that he needs more. He just references that he's gonna take this and to be even better. Like you said, there's just a brilliant monologue, because you really needed to be in his head at that point.
Yes.
Not even to justify the decision, because you knew he was well past any sort of justification, but just for him to lay out his mantra about why, having been faced with an amount of money that would stop him from being beaten up or worse, that he was then gonna continue to risk it all on it was like an 8-1 bet or something. It was like ridiculously unlikely. It had 3 basic provisos to it, 3 different stipulations, and it was an outside chance from a 36-year-old basketball player who's obsessed with an opal.
Oh my God. But he knew, he was right. I mean, obviously he wasn't. I know that he was a gambling addict and that was why. But, I don't know. I don't want to say that he did have an intuition, because he got everything wrong the whole way through. But when it came to actually at least when it came to placing actual bets with money, not taking chances with money, he always seemed to do it correctly, but it was never going to be about winning bets. His problem was that he had a gambling personality and he would just chance things, and that's why even when he won the bets, because he would have won the first bet, but his brother-in-law stopped it because the money was not his, and he won the second bet, became a millionaire, maybe even more of a millionaire than he already was, because we know that he had 2 properties and a business. But yeah, again, it didn't matter, because his behaviour surrounding all of these things was the same, and you can only win so many times. It's just and I really liked as well, you have gone into this with me, how the problem that he had as a person is that he would rely on the people around him and the people in his, kind of entourage to be reliable in a way that he wasn't. And they were actually unreliable in exactly the same way that he was. And he was outraged by it. He was fucked off.
Yeah, it was classic sort of like, no loyalty amongst thieves sort of thing. Like it
Yeah.
was they flocked together because they all just really enjoyed material wealth, and some of them were there because, or quite a few of them were there because so they could parasite off of his wealth, like Delaney. But he has a friend who's peddling these Rolex watches outside of a store, and who specifically take, sort of the black guys that he knows into his jewelry shop to buy bling Furbies and stuff. Again, what a lovely detail the bling Furbies were.
That was brilliant.
They summed up his artistic vision perfectly. It's like this man created something and it was fucking horrendous. Then there's also his mistress slash girlfriend now, maybe. He's like in the middle of like announcing the divorce from his wife, Adina Menzel, who is brilliant in this in a way that I didn't realize was possible from not even just because she does musicals, just because she's set for life on her voice alone. Like she's two of the biggest characters in musical entertainment,
of course,
and somehow she fucking just completely belted out a really challenging role against Adam Sandler. But yes, so his mistress is also just trying to sap him for as much wealth as possible, and again the trade-off is like he gives them money and influence, and in turn he gets validation, and that's all he really wants. And this is the reason he's got all his like basketball rings, and you see it when he goes to Philadelphia and he gets abandoned. Like he just really wants to be in that world, or like when he's at the Weekend concert as well. But he's not, because he's 30 years too old. Even if he was that young, he probably still wouldn't be.
And when he has that conversation, with Kevin, when he's talking about how he's going to win the game and then he's going to win the bet, and, he does talk about it like it is his game, and he is winning at it, and he does want to win. He wants to show that what he does has merit and he has a talent, and that's what he has in the last scene, in that insane boiler room scene where they're trapped in the cage and he's sitting there and he's watching the fucking game and he's jumping around and stuff, because it's like, no, you have to understand, my intuition was correct. I know what's going to happen, and it's going to sort you out and it's going to sort me out, and you're going to be grateful for it. And an insane character study. I am so glad that I've seen it. Definitely. One of a kind.
Big props to that cage, by the way, as a set piece. Like they use it like 2 or 3 times to really great effect. Like when KG and everyone gets stuck in there, that's a really horrible, tense scene, because he's just so desperate to appease these people, and it breaks. And like they value their time so much. Everyone's always apologizing for wasting each other's time.
Well, yeah, the belief that they might leave at that point as well was really, really unbearable to me in the cinema.
Exactly, he needed that opal, and so there was a really good as soon as they wrote that in and they realized they could get, and again it's a perfect, not only was it a great set piece, it also set up what was going to happen at the end of the film really nicely. So just from a writing perspective, I really rate the inclusion of the and again perfectly thematic within the jewelry store. Of course he'd have one. He's dealing with millions of dollars. A really great prop, essentially, that is used magnificently throughout the film. Just very beautifully structured. Like I said to you when we left the cinema, I can't imagine how you would write this film, which is always great, because sometimes it's painfully apparent when you're watching a film.
It literally drives me insane that they made something like this. I mean, I don't know where it came from. That's all. I mean, I guess they must just know someone like this.
You speculated that perhaps being in the movie production, and again they've only recently had sort of like big successful films. This is their this and Good Times are like their sort of like big films, but maybe the art of gambling on successive films is something akin to this, and they took some inspiration from that.
Yes, that's the closest I can come. If they see a little bit of themselves, because the financing involved in making a film, you do just seem to have to be crazy to actually do it.
When we watched the Laundromat, the way that the director Soderbergh and Scott Z. Byrne were talking about setting up these shell companies to make sure that if the film does bottle out, they don't become bankrupt.
Yes,
was just terrifying. I was like, imagine if every project you sat down had that hanging over your head. It's like, this might just be bankruptcy if this goes wrong, if I don't take the necessary legal steps. Yeah, no, it takes a certain sort of person.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel it has to be seen. It must be seen more. If I can big it up once more, it was so good, and I knew that it would be so widely enjoyed that, as Aaron can verify, we got out of the movie, and I just started sending a series of frantic text messages to anyone I knew who would care. Quite a wide slice of people as well. There was some variety there. Just being like, man, you've got to see Uncut Gems. You've got to try and see it in the cinema. I know that you're just going to love it. I know that it's going to be a really amazing experience. And if not, then you just got to watch it the day it comes out on Netflix, man. and I think it will be hugely word of mouth.
No, definitely. I think it's gonna. I mean, if it doesn't get a wide stream success, and I think it's already like A24's most profitable film, then I think it will definitely become some sort of cult classic. Yeah, I think those are the only two options for it, which is great. And again, being on Netflix, I think will only compound that. Because again, that's the great thing about word of mouth with Netflix is, you know, some asshole you don't even like can recommend it to you at the water cooler, and you might actually watch it because it's not costing you anything. But...
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think the thing is about Adam Sandler is, you know, everyone's got his number. Like, there's no annoyance. Like, we know which Adam Sandler movies to avoid because it's really, really obvious, you know, from the trailers. Whereas this one comes out and, you know, we all kind of like tip our heads up again. It's like, oh, Sandman's back. You know, like he's decided to do a good movie again. I can't even be angry with him because I'm not stupid enough to buy a ticket for Jack and Jill, and so.
And he's even removed the temptation for things like The Ridiculous Six because he's not even trying to put them in cinemas.
Bang! There you go.
What a consummate hustler. Gentleman thief.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah,
go see it.
We've been checked for traps.
And don't gamble.
Ever.
In any way, shape, or form.